I tripled my net worth in just 2 weeks. On the third week, I lost everything. Not figuratively, literally. Zero. Gone. A blinking balance screen that might as well have said, "You idiot." It didn't start out like this. In fact, I was the responsible one among my friends. I had a steady job, some savings, and a cautious attitude toward money. I even followed a few investing subreddits and listened to podcasts with titles like "Smart Money Moves in Your 20s." But then crypto showed up like a loud, shiny carnival and dragged me in by the collar. It was everywhere. TikTok, Reddit, Discord servers full of hype, screenshots of 500% gains, memes about Lambos, 20-year-olds claiming they'd made it after 3 months of trading. I didn't want to miss out. I told myself I was just testing the waters, just learning. I put in a few $100s, made a little profit, and thought, this is easier than I expected. Then I discovered margin trading. It sounded magical. You borrow money from the exchange to make bigger bets. It's 5x, 10x, 20x. If you win, your gains are multiplied. If you lose, well, don't think about that. I didn't. At first, I played it safe. 2x leverage, then 5x. And then came the winning streak. 6 trades in a row. Perfect timing. Perfect exits. My $2,000 ballooned to $6,000 in 14 days. I felt unstoppable. Genius-level intuition. Market trading savant. I started watching charts like a hawk, waking up at 2 a.m. to check Bitcoin, skipping meals just to focus. I wasn't addicted, or at least that's what I told myself. I was disciplined, laser-focused. I laughed at friends who dollar-cost averaged into index funds. "You're missing the real money," I said. "The slow path is for boomers." I even posted a couple humble brags on Discord with green P&L screenshots and the ASO classic disclaimer. Not financial advice. I was riding the dopamine wave. With every win, I raised the stakes. 10x leverage, then 20x. No stop loss. Who needs a stop loss when you're on a heater? Risk management. It's for people who might lose. I remember texting my best friend one night. "If you're not leveraging, you're not serious." Yes, I really said that. Like an idiot in a casino yelling at people for playing it safe at the blackjack table. Week 3 began with overconfidence and ended with destruction. It was a Sunday night, a minor regulation scare out of Asia, some bearish tweets, and then the dump. Hard, sharp, no-breaks crash. My position, long on a volatile altcoin. 20x leverage, 80% of my entire stack in one trade, because I was sure. I remember watching the red candle melt down the chart. I remember the lag on my app. I remember refreshing, and then liquidated. Your account balance, $0. I sat there, stunned, not angry. It's not panicked, just ... hollow. Like someone had scooped out my insides and left me staring at my own stupidity in silence. 10 minutes passed, maybe more. I don't really know. I just stared at that screen, not blinking, just hoping something would reverse. A glitch. A bug. A second chance. It never came. I didn't sleep that night. I lay on my bed, eyes open, heart quiet, not racing, pounding, still, numb, like when you realize you can't undo something, no matter how hard you wish for it. The next morning, I went to work like nothing happened. I smiled in meetings, I answered emails, even laughed at a joke someone made. But inside, I was replaying every second of that night. The moment I went ill-in, the hesitation to close the trade. The warning signs I ignored, the way I felt like God just days before. Now I felt like dirt. I didn't tell anyone. Not my friends, not my family. Didn't want sympathy. I didn't want advice. What could they say? No thanks. I already told myself that 1,000 times. I deleted my trading apps. I muted every crypto-related group chat. I unfollowed every chart guru on Twitter. I wanted nothing to do with it. And yet ... I couldn't stop thinking about it. Not the money, but the shame. The shame of being stupid. The shame of thinking I was special. The shame of preaching risk while secretly gambling. It's the shame of ignoring every warning sign because I thought I was different. That's the thing people don't talk about when it comes to financial loss. It's not just about the money. It's about what it does to your sense of self, your confidence, your identity. I wasn't just broke. I was broken. I started asking myself weird questions. Was I ever actually smart? What if I just got lucky before? What does this say about me as a person? Yeah, it got that deep. One margin call and I spiraled into a full-blown existential crisis. But maybe that's necessary. Maybe everyone needs their version of rock bottom. Maybe you don't really understand risk until you stared into the abyss of your own arrogance and realized you weren't trading. You were gambling in a suit. The days after I lost everything were the quietest and loudest of my life. Quiet on the outside. I wasn't talking to anyone. I wasn't posting. I wasn't checking the markets. But inside my head, chaos, regret, loops of self-blame. 1,000 what-ifs spinning nonstop. What if I had just used a X? What if I had set a stop-loss? What if I had closed the trade 10 minutes earlier? I stopped sleeping properly, not because I was anxious. Anxiety implies energy. I was drained. I'd lay in bed scrolling Reddit, reading other people's trading horror stories, like some sort of masochist looking for company in misery. It was oddly comforting, seeing that others had blown up accounts too, some even bigger than mine. Misery does love company, especially if that company speaks in candlesticks and liquidation notices. I started avoiding people. Friends would invite me out. I'd say no. I didn't want to talk, because if I did, I might crack and tell them what happened, and I wasn't ready to be judged. I could already hear it. You really went all in on leverage? Didn't you know better? Crypto's a scam anyway. They didn't get it. They didn't know what it felt like to win 6 trades in a row. To feel like the chosen one. They hadn't stayed up all night staring at green candles like they were omens of greatness. They hadn't felt the rush. That dangerous, addictive rush of flipping a $2,000 account into $6,000 and thinking I cracked the code. Act! You don't just lose money when you blow up on margin. You lose your self-image. You lose the version of you that believed you were on the way. You lose the identity you've built up through every successful trade. Now, I was just another guy who got greedy, another Reddit thread waiting to happen. But the worst part, the absolute worst part, was how alone I felt. Not because people abandoned me, because I had no one to blame but myself. It would have been easier if someone had scammed me, if an influencer rugged a project I followed, if an exchange froze withdrawals. At least then I'd have a villain. But this was me. I clicked the button. I chose the leverage. I ignored the warning signs. I was the villain. There's something humiliating about watching your entire safety net evaporate because of your own decision, and having no one else to yell at but the mirror. I started doubting everything. Should I even be in finance? Am I just a reckless person pretending to be responsible? Was all that financial literacy? I claimed to have just bullshit. I stopped listening to trading podcasts. Couldn't stomach them anymore. The same voices that used to inspire me now sounded smug, detached, naive. I even started noticing how ridiculous my old mindset had become. I used to skip family dinners to monitor positions. I used to check my phone every 3 minutes like a dog waiting for a treat. I used to think anyone who wasn't in crypto was missing out. Looking back, I wasn't investing. I was worshiping a slot machine in the church of online hype. And the sermons, they were everywhere. Twitter threads that said 5 steps to becoming a millionaire. Discord mods acting like prophets. YouTube thumbnails screaming I made $20,000 in a week. Here's how. I bought into all of it. I let the noise drown out the basics. Buy what you understand. Invest what you can afford to lose. Have a plan. Respect risk. But none of that sounds sexy on a TikTok clip, does it? After about 3 weeks of numbing silence, I started writing everything down. Not for a blog, not for social media, just for me. I wrote about the trades, the logic behind them, the lies I told myself, the dopamine hits, the denial, the moment I knew it was over. I even wrote down the dumbest thing I did, opening that final 20x long position on a coin I barely understood, based solely on a Twitter thread by some guy with anime profile pic and the username Cryptomnesia420. That alone should have been a red flag. But when you're high on wins, red flags look like decorations. Journaling helped. Not in a dramatic way. I didn't wake up one day cured, but it gave me space to process. It forced me to slow down and think, something I hadn't done since this whole journey began. And slowly, very slowly, I started rebuilding. Not my money, That would take time. I'm still working on that. What I started rebuilding was my mindset. I stopped trying to win it back. That's the trap. That's where most people fall deeper, chasing the loss, trying to undo the pain by doubling down. Instead, I let go. I accepted that the money was gone, that the version of me who made those trades no longer existed, and that maybe, just maybe, this version, the one who'd been humbled, broken, gutted, might actually be a better investor one day. But only if I learned, truly learned. So I set some new rules. No more margin, ever. No more overnight bets. No trades based on hype. And if I ever feel like a genius again, I step away. Because real investing, the kind that builds wealth, is boring, slow. It doesn't make you feel like a god. It makes you feel like a gardener. Patient. Focused. Long-term. That's who I'm trying to become now. I still believe in crypto. I still believe in financial freedom. But I no longer believe in shortcuts. Because the fastest way to lose everything is to think you've figured it all out. I didn't talk about my loss for almost 2 months. Not to my closest friends, not to my partner, not even to my therapist, who had been gently nudging me for weeks asking why I seemed disconnected. I just kept saying I'm fine, just tired. The lie rolled off my tongue like a reflex. But inside, I was still reliving it. Every chart, every click, every second leading up to the liquidation. That silence? It wasn't peace, it was paralysis. Then one night I cracked. I was out having dinner with 2 friends, both of whom had casually mentioned getting into crypto a while back. One of them, a guy I'll call Ryan, said, "Bro, I'm thinking of margin trading ETH before the halving. Just a small, long, maybe 10x. I froze. It wasn't anger. It wasn't fear. It was this overwhelming urge to grab him by the shoulders and scream, "Don't, please. I've been there. I know how this ends." Instead, I just said, "I lost everything trading margin last month." Silence. Forks paused midair. Glasses clinked awkwardly. And then wait. ... seriously. I nodded. And for the next 30 minutes, I spilled everything. The euphoria. The wins. The arrogance. The 20x leverage. The liquidation. The shame. The mental spiral. The fake smiles. The isolation. Every ugly, humiliating detail. Not dramatized. It's not sugar-coated. Just ... real. To my surprise, they didn't laugh. They didn't scold me. They didn't say you should have known better. They just listened. And then Ryan said, "Dude, I almost did the same thing last month. I had the order ready but backed out last second. That's when it hit me. Everyone's on the edge. Everyone wants the shortcut. Everyone is this close to thinking they're the exception to the rule. It's not stupidity. It's not greed. It's a culture. System of hype. Social media rewards the loudest gains, not the smartest plans. No one posts, 'I made 7% this year with index funds.' They post, 'I turned $300 into $30,000 in 2 weeks. Here's my strategy.' Except the strategy is 90% luck, 10% vibes, and 0% repeatable. The more I opened up, the more I realized how many others had blown up accounts, lost savings, hidden their shame, and never told anyone. We're all walking around thinking we're the only ones dumb enough to mess it up. We're not. That's why I'm telling this story now. Not to sound wise, not to teach you anything, but because maybe, just maybe, someone will hear this before they press buy on a 15x leveraged long based on a meme and a gut feeling. So if you're reading this and you're on the fence, ... if your finger is hovering over that confirm trade button ... if you're thinking, I've done the research, I know what I'm doing, let me ask you this. Are you investing or are you gambling with fancy vocabulary? Be honest. Because I sure as hell wasn't investing. I was feeding a slot machine wearing the costume of a trader. And look, I'm not saying margin is evil. I'm not saying leverage is bad. But it's a tool, a scalpel. And I was swinging it around like a drunk surgeon in a blackout. There's a reason casinos give you free drinks. It lowers your inhibitions and makes you forget how much you're risking. Crypto Twitter works the same way. Only the drinks are dopamine hits from green candles and laser eyes. What I learned the hard way is this. If you need margin to make money, you don't actually have a strategy. You have a hope. And hope, my friend, is not a plan. So what now? I still invest. But I treat it like brushing my teeth. Regular, boring, consistent. I don't chase pumps. I don't YOLO trades. I don't enter a position if I wouldn't be okay holding it through a 50% drawdown. I treat money with the respect it deserves, because it took losing it all for me to realize how sacred it is. Emotionally, I'm still rebuilding. There are days I look at my old P&L screenshots and feel the sting. Days I wish I could go back and slap the chart out of my own hand. But I also know that pain was necessary. It was the tuition fee for the education I never wanted but desperately needed. And the biggest lesson? Don't let a temporary win convince you you're invincible. Because markets don't care how smart you feel. They don't care how perfect your streak is. They don't care if you need that trade to hit so you can pay rent. Markets are ruthless. Margin amplifies that ruthlessness by 10x, 20x, 50x. Until you're not just wrong, you're wrecked. These days I talk openly about what happened. I don't hide from it anymore. And ironically, that's made me feel more confident than any green trade ever did. Not because I've mastered markets, because I've mastered myself. Or at least started to. So yeah, I'll say it plainly now. I quit margin trading. Forever. Not because I couldn't make it work, but because I finally understood what it was doing to me. Financially, emotionally, psychologically. It turned me into someone I didn't recognize. And I like this version of me more. Have you ever mistaken luck for skill? Have you ever thought you were the exception until you weren't? Share your story, because if there's one thing I know now, it's this. You don't need someone to preach at you. You need someone who's bled, stood back up, and said, I've been there. You're not alone. But you don't have to stay there.